Today, we're going to talk about the first recorded financial crash in history, the world's first bubble. And it might surprise you that it wasn't caused by some wild stockbroker or even a crypto influencer. It was caused by flowers. It's the year 1634, and you've just hit the motherlode. You are a lowly peasant no longer. Now, you're rich. You've got stacks of cash. But what can you buy with all this money? Well, almost everything, because there's one thing that everyone who is anyone is clamoring for, and those are tulips. Welcome to the Dutch Golden Age, a period in the 17th century when the Dutch Republic was an unparalleled global economic power. It was the era of Rembrandt and Vermeer, of Dutch exploration and conquest, and of the East India Company, the world's first multinational corporation. And driving this golden age was a new kind of person, the European merchant class, which had grown fat on spice monopolies and Asian trade. And they wanted nice things, really nice things. And one of the nicest things were these flowers, exotic blossoms from faraway lands called tulips. They had been brought back from the East by Dutch explorers, and quickly became a status symbol for the wealthy. Now, when something is only available to the elite, it naturally becomes valuable. This is the law of supply and demand. When everyone can get their hands on it, it doesn't have any special value. That's why diamonds aren't actually that valuable. A 5-carat diamond is not intrinsically more valuable than a 1/2-carat diamond. In fact, the bigger the diamond, the less valuable it is proportionally. But because 5-carat diamonds are so rare, they're hoarded by the rich and used as symbols of wealth and power. It's the same reason that vintage cars, comic books, and sneakers go for so much money. They're only available to the few, so they must be worth a lot, right? Well, everyone wants to be part of the elite, and that means everyone wants to get their hands on these rare and coveted tulips. But how do you compete with the wealthy when they can outbid you for the rarest and most expensive bulbs? Simple, you make them rarer and more expensive. Now, at first, tulip trading was exclusive to the wealthy elite, a kind of private game where they could one-up each other with increasingly extravagant offers. But soon the middle class wanted in on the action, and it didn't take long for the humble tulip to become the rage of the town. Merchant princes were trading them as gifts. Painters were painting them. Poets were writing about them, and everyone was obsessed with them. But how did it go from a simple flower to the biggest financial disaster in history? Well, like any good story, it starts with a garden. Now, the people who traded tulips weren't interested in planting them. They just wanted them for the show. So they hired poor farmers to grow the bulbs for them. And the farmers would sell the bulbs to the traders when they bloomed in the spring. And then the traders would sell them again and again and again. That sounds great if you're a farmer, right? Sell the bulb once, and you've made your whole year's profit. But the traders were looking to make more money, so they started making deals for the future. You see, while the tulip craze was raging, it seemed like everyone wanted tulips, and there were never enough to go around. So the traders came up with a system to guarantee that they would get the tulips they needed at the best prices. They drew up contracts for the future. These were futures, agreements to buy or sell something at a predetermined price at a specified time in the future. They were a way of guaranteeing that the traders could get the tulips they wanted without having to wait until spring. They could secure their contracts now and pick up their tulips when they bloomed. Except the problem was that not everyone stuck to the contracts. Once the traders secured their tulips, many of them sold their contracts to others, creating a secondary market for tulip futures, and this created a problem. See, with all these contracts floating around, there was no way to know how many tulips were going to be available in the spring. If a bunch of farmers saw everyone trading these contracts, they might hold on to their bulbs and drive up the prices. Or if the traders thought that the contracts were overvalued, they would simply refuse to deliver the tulips and keep the money. So to restore order to the market, they turned to the government. And the Dutch government, being ever efficient, created the world's first official derivatives exchange, the Dutch East India Company. Yeah, that one. To ensure that the contracts were always worth something, the government mandated that whoever held a contract could force the seller to forfeit their bulb if the price was high enough. This encouraged people to buy the contracts because now they knew that they wouldn't lose money. If the price went down, they could just tell the seller, "Hey, I want my bulb," and walk away with a free flower. This led to a frenzy. Everyone wanted to own a piece of the action. Everyone wanted to own a tulip. To make matters worse, no one knew how many tulips were out there. Some bulbs were common, but others were incredibly rare. It was rumored that there were only 7 of the rarest kind, the Semper Augustus with its crimson streaks and black edges, that made each bulb priceless. Tulip futures became the hottest ticket in town. People gambled on their value, bought and sold them daily, traded them like modern stocks, and the prices kept going up, up, and up. It seemed like the value of tulips would never stop increasing, and no one wanted to miss out. The entire economy of Amsterdam became centered around tulips. Shops closed to open tulip exchanges. Artists abandoned their paintbrushes to become full-time speculators. And the entire city became consumed with the flower. But all good things must come to an end. And in the spring of 1637, something strange happened. No one showed up to buy the tulips. All of a sudden, prices plummeted. Those 7 mythical Semper Augustus bulbs, which had been selling for the equivalent of mansions, were now going for the price of cabbages. Families were bankrupted, fortunes were lost, markets froze. No one would buy or sell. And the entire economy of the Netherlands ground to a halt. So what happened? Well, it's hard to say. Some believe that people simply lost interest in tulips. Others say that a rival flower, the daffodil, was introduced to the market and stole their thunder. Still, others say that the bubble just grew too big and eventually burst. Whatever the reason, the tulip market collapsed overnight, and the era of the tulip was over. So why should you care about this story? Because this was the first time in recorded history that a speculative mania had gripped a population. The first time that regular people had abandoned logic and reason to chase get-rich-quick schemes. This was also the first time that a market had crashed. It showed the dangers of speculation, the pitfalls of the futures market, and the allure of the quick buck. But perhaps most importantly, it showed the folly of crowd behavior and the dangers of unchecked greed. When everyone is clamoring for the same thing, when everyone is trying to get in on the latest craze, that's when the markets turn. That's when fortunes are lost, and that's when the greatest crashes happen. But don't worry, this story has a happy ending. After the tulip bubble burst, the Dutch economy recovered. Trade continued, the golden age went on, and the tulip craze was forgotten. That is, until a few hundred years later, when a painter named Vincent van Gogh started buying them by the fistful. Maybe it doesn't have a happy ending. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more history that still echoes today in under 10 minutes.